Alrighty, in this video, we're gonna check out our interview setup again. We talked about a fill light, a hair light, a main key light, working with just one light and a hair light. Now we're gonna talk about how to dress up the background. So the idea here is that we might wanna throw maybe a little bit of splash of color. We might wanna throw a little bit of highlighting in here. And if this were the actual setup that we were using, I think what I might like to do is throw a little splash of color behind the piano, maybe get a little bit of texturing on this back wall here, and maybe get a little highlight on this piano. But the idea is we don't want to just throw a whole bunch of light back here. We want to keep it really, really sharp and really, really small. So we don't want to throw a softbox up here and call that a background light. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this LED, this battery powered light, and I'm going to do something with the piano. We're going to throw a light behind the piano, and we're going to bust out the Source 4 or perhaps the Lowell Omni light, and we're going to use a cookie, and we're going to throw a little texturing on the back wall. We have a couple of lights here on the background, and let me take you through what we have going on here. I threw the LED light right in the piano here to give just a cool little highlight from a little glow in the piano. We traded out the LED hair light for the Lowell Pro hair light. So way over there in the corner, we have the Lowell Omni light with a little metal tin or aluminum foil cookie. And up front here, we have a 2-bank fluorescent light with some gels taped to it. We have a couple of purple gels, some blue gels here, just to give a little bit of color over here. And I made sure to position that so it's not really affecting Rachel at all. If anything, we're getting a little bit of reflection from the wall here. And then we have another 2-bank fluorescent hiding behind the piano with some orange and some red on it. So what we can do here to really see what's going on is we're going to add our big flag back. We can't see much of what's going on in the background until we flag off what we have. We're going to turn on each one of these lights so you can see what's going on individually here. Right now we just have the Lowell Omni on, and the effect is pretty subtle. If we bring this out this way, and I know I'm not using gloves here, but I'm not going to touch any hot parts, and we can get something that's a little bit more drastic, because now we're coming at a more direct angle. And so from the camera's perspective, now we're getting a little bit more dappling of light. It is very, very subtle. And we could even get this a little bit closer probably. So now we're gonna get, there we go. Now we get some little blobs of light back there, and that's what we're looking for. This front light here is not doing anything. It's not quite positioned exactly right. So we want to catch just the front part of this piano here, just like that. And make sure it's still out of our shot. That's great. We can actually get this right by Rachel. That's nice. We're getting a little touch of color there on the back wall as well. And then what we can do with this light behind the piano, if we had a little bit wider of a shot, this would work a little bit better. But for now, we can do is we can let the light spill a little bit here on our background. Because this is fluorescent, it won't have a lot of throw here. There we go. Now that may be a little bit hot, so I'm gonna bleed that off just a hair because I don't want it to compete too much with what the cookie's doing. So this is certainly not the only way to do it. There's a lot of options.
So I wanted to show you a few more setups here, and this is from a documentary that I worked on a few years ago called Project Snowfighter 2, and this is some of the interview portions of that documentary. This project represented a unique set of challenges because we were on the road and space and budget was limited, so we couldn't bring everything. We couldn't bring all the lights, all the stands that we wanted to, so we had a limited set of resources. So a lot of the times we had to get a little bit creative in how we worked with practical lighting, natural lighting, and the supplemental lighting that we brought. So just looking at the background lights here, what we did was we utilized this kind of open bay that's behind here, and this truck that you see in the left, we added just a couple of splashes of highlights from some 650 and I believe a 300 watt Fresnel just to give a little highlight, and all the rest of the background lighting is coming from the big open windows. And so we had a little bit of mixed color temperature here, which worked pretty good. And then in this setup here, we're using fluorescent lighting for the key. And then we're using two lights on the background. I believe one is on this little plant back here. It's an LED light shooting up, and that's creating a nice little shadowing effect. And then we have one that's up and to the left here that's shooting over and just catching the side of this window here and just throwing a little light here on the chair and the books and just grabbing a little highlight here. And I'm showing you a wide and a tight setup here because a lot of the times a tight shot is not super telling as far as what's going on in the background. So I wanted to include a wide shot and a tight shot. In this particular setup right here, we didn't use any additional background lighting. We set up the framing and the main key lights and the fill lights so that we could utilize the big windows here in the bay garage doors that were behind these large tractors here. And it worked really, really well to provide a lot of nice highlights and a lot of nice little glints and reflections in the background without adding a lot of extra complex setup to the mix. And then in this shot here, we used some pretty standard lights here. You can actually see the reflection of one of the umbrella lights in the window with the tractor here. And for the background, we used a low DP light, and I believe it was a 1K bulb with a very saturated blue filter there. And you can see that it's creating a really nice contrast against the yellow tractor, and it's also catching a really nice reflection on those metal studs. It was kind of an open wall back there with some metal studs, and it created some really nice reflections there in the background. And then for this final setup here that I'm going to show you, this was, again, really, really simple. We used a fluorescent light for the key and a hair light, which was a LED light. And then to just give a little side light to that tractor and those bags of salt or whatever is behind Kyle here, I used a 650 watt Fresnel and used the barn doors to shape it so it was a really narrow shaft of light, and it did a really great job of providing some nice highlighting here to this truck.